it was so destructive. It was so destructive. Oh.
I don't want to cause you more pain as we talk, but one of the lowest points of this past year has to be when your mother was forced to testify, or asked to testify before the grand jury, and she broke down and sobbed on the stand.
A mother should be forced to testify against her daughter.
Monica says she could not have gotten through this past year without her mother and her father, whom she describes as her Rock of Gibraltar. Through much of the early part of the year, she also relied on a family friend, attorney Bill Ginsburg.
I would like Monica to be free and out of jeopardy. That's what I'd like to see as soon as possible.
I want to ask you a little bit about Bill Ginsburg. In the beginning, he was on television, and it seemed he was very helpful. As time went on, what do you think of Bill Ginsburg's role?
I agree with you that at first he was, I think his motives were in the right place.
Well, joining us now is Monica Lewinsky's attorney, William Ginsburg.
But unfortunately, I think he got bitten by the bug.
I want some goddamn privacy.
It became more about Bill Ginsburg than it did about my well-being and my welfare.
Do you think that Bill Ginsburg did you harm?
Yes, I do.
I want to play a videotape for you, a very famous videotape.
I did not have sexual relations with that woman, Miss Lewinsky. I never told anybody to lie, not a single time, never.
What was your reaction when you saw this?
That woman part of the quote was so very harsh, and it was hurtful. I could see how angry he was, and I didn't think he needed to go about denying the relationship in this manner. That was disappointing. I think he could have taken a higher road in his denial.
How?
It still would have been he said, she said, if he had said, Monica and I were friends, she's a great woman, she's a bright woman, I don't know why she's saying these things.
So Monica was bewildered and hurt, but did she still love Bill Clinton? Indeed, does she still love Bill Clinton? And what does she think of Linda Tripp? Linda Tripp says she would like to give you a hug. What would you like to give Linda Tripp? We are now almost at the end of our story. Where does Monica Lewinsky go from here? Will there ever be a job? Will there ever be a man in her life? Can she get Bill Clinton out of her heart and mind? And can she ever live down the reputation that it was she who pursued Bill Clinton? I'd like to show you another tape.
And said that she had come on to him and made a demand for sex, that he had rebuffed her, turned her down, and that she threatened him. And he said that she said to him that she was called the stalker by her peers.
Sidney Blumenthal, the aide to President Clinton, saying that you were a stalker. The whole country then felt, if they hadn't before, that you were a stalker. Now, Bill Clinton deliberately smeared you.
Mm-hmm. That was the defining moment when I really knew and fell out of love with him. And that I knew at that moment that he was definitely not the person that I had ever thought he was.
This past summer, you were offered immunity, finally. And you were then required to discuss every intimate detail, every sexual detail of your relationship before a grand jury. It must have been excruciating.
It's very, very violating. Very violating.
There is the question of why you offered so many intimate details to the prosecutor. I mean, why, for example, tell them about that cigar business, you know?
Well,
they would never have known, would they? You hadn't told them?
No, they did know.
They did know.
They did know, especially from calling my girlfriends before the grand jury.
You teased about this with your girlfriends?
Well, sure.
Well,
I mean, that's the kind of relationship that we had. And still do have. We're tight, and so I was afraid if I sort of just answered the question as they asked them and didn't give the full information, that then they'd think I wasn't telling the truth and they'd take my immunity away.
your father had told me, we did an interview together before President Clinton's admission, that he didn't know if you had sex with the president, and he didn't want to know. And then this testimony where he must have known.
And I think it's hard for him when the man who hurt your baby is the President of the United States. You can't go out and express your anger, or you can't go beat the guy up. That was a low moment.
Indeed, I did have a relationship with Miss Lewinsky that was not appropriate. In fact, it was wrong. It constituted a critical lapse in judgment and a personal failure on my part for which I am solely and completely responsible.
You're watching this now. What do you think?
I felt like a piece of trash. I felt dirty, and I felt used, and I was disappointed.
Felt he was being serviced? Was the impression?
That was the impression he gave.
In retrospect, do you think that Bill Clinton really cared about you?
Some days I think yes, and some days I think no.
Do you think he has any genuine remorse? Or do you think he's just sorry that he got caught?
When I think of the person that I thought was Bill Clinton, I think he has genuine remorse. When I think of the person that I now see as 100% politician, I think he's sorry he got caught.
How did you spend your time this past year?
I worried. I worried, but a few months into it, my stepmom, Barbara, got me into knitting. So I started to knit, and I've knit quite many scarves and still trying to finish my first sweater. So
everybody you know has a scarf?
Pretty much so. Pretty much so.
So here's the cover of Newsweek, Monica's His Time.
That was very strange for me to see.
Monica told me she read and followed almost everything, even the most disparaging stories. Monica, the tabloids were terrible to you, especially about your weight. Tubby temptress, portly pepper pot. Did the weight stuff bother you?
Of course. That was painful.
Hi, I'm meeting a friend here.
Your name?
Monica Lewinsky.
Oh, yes.
How did you feel about the jokes, all the comics telling jokes?
Well, some of the jokes I've laughed at.
And the humidity, man, I'll tell you, people's clothes are stickier than Monica Lewinsky's. Man, it was just...
The secretary said she knew something was sort of suspicious when she found herself using phrases like, "Sir, your 3 a.m. is here."
I have a pretty good sense of humor. And I've even been rumored to tell a joke or two.
Any of these jokes you can share with us?
No.
Not too clean, huh?
No,
Okay.
not on this time slot.
If her testimony is truthful, then the president committed the offenses alleged in the articles of impeachment.
Then came the president's impeachment trial. Up until that time, people had never seen Monica tell any part of her own story.
You, Monica S. Lewinsky, do swear or affirm that the evidence...
She did, in a videotaped deposition played at the Senate trial. Some of the House prosecutors said that you were trying to protect the president. Were you, even then, trying to protect Bill Clinton?
No. I was not trying to hurt him, and I was not trying to protect him.
So here we are, and it's almost the end of the story. The president is going on with his life. Where do you go from here?
I don't know. I think I have a lot of healing to do.
Are you still on medication?
Yes.
And this is antidepressant medication?
Yes.
Do you have any goals? Is there anything you'd like to do?
I'd like to make a contribution to society, a good contribution this time, I think. And I know it's corny, but I'd really like to find the right person and have a meaningful relationship and get married and have kids. That's really important to me.
Any man in your life now?
No Prince Charming yet.
You and I met before today when you first agreed to do an interview with me, and we had an initial meeting, and you said to me then that you'd seen Dr. Joyce Brothers on television. And that she had said, can you imagine a young man bringing home Monica Lewinsky to his parents and saying, I'm going to marry Monica Lewinsky? That really bothered you.
That was a bad day. That was a bad day. There have been some nights where I have just stayed awake crying, thinking about how am I ever going to have any sense of normalcy again in my life.
Linda Tripp says she would like to give you a hug. What would you like to give Linda Tripp?
Oh, nothing.
What do you think of Linda Tripp?
I pity her. I would hate to be her. She is not me.
Have you learned anything from this experience?
I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot. I've learned how important family is and how to honor that and to cherish that. I have learned the true meaning of friendship. I have really my family and friends have been amazing.
If you had to do it all over again, would you have had the relationship with Bill Clinton?
There's some days that I regret that the relationship ever started, and there's some days that I just regret that I ever confided in Linda Tripp.
Monica, are you still in love with Bill Clinton?
No.
Sure?
Mm-hmm.
Over?
Sometimes I have warm feelings, sometimes I'm proud of him still, and sometimes I hate his guts, and he makes me sick.
What will you tell your children when you have them?
Mommy made a big mistake.
And that is the understatement of the year. For ABC News, I'm Barbara Walters. Good night.